Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the hulking drachnid warrior, her coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. The creature's chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh medical bay lights, and all four of its arms were raised in what she hoped was a non-threatening gesture. Fix. Hatchling? The universal translator crackled with the warrior's attempt at galactic standard. Please? Sarah blinked twice, set down her coffee, her fourth cup of the day, but who's counting, and took a proper look at what the drachnid was cradling in its lower set of arms. Sure enough, there was a small bundle wrapped in what appeared to be shed exoskeleton plates, a traditional drachnid swaddling material, if her xenobiology courses weren't lying to her. The thing was, drachnids didn't ask for help. Ever. They were the apex predators of the known galaxy, the species that had every other spacefaring race checking under their beds at night. They were the reason humanity's first contact protocols included the phrase, "Run like hell if they're bigger than a bus and have more teeth than sense." And yet here was one, in her medical bay, on a Tuesday morning of all things, asking her to treat its baby. Right, Sarah said, switching to her doctor voice, the one that worked on everything from terrified human children to panicking Xerxian blob creatures. Let's take a look at the little one, shall we? The warrior, whom Sarah mentally dubbed Bob because their actual names sounded like someone gargling gravel while playing the bagpipes, carefully placed the bundle on her examination table. The hatchling inside couldn't have been more than a few days old, its exoskeleton still soft and translucent enough that Sarah could see its internal organs working overtime. What seems to be the problem? She asked, already running her medical scanner over the infant. Bob made a series of clicking sounds that the translator eventually rendered as, not eating, growing wrong. Others say, terminate. Sarah's head snapped up at that last word. Terminate? As in? She made a cutting motion across her throat, immediately regretting the gesture when Bob's mandibles clicked together anxiously. Yes, weak ones, not survive in clan. Bob's upper arms twitched. But herd humans, fix things, fix broken ones, make strong. Well, wasn't that interesting? Sarah had never considered that humanity's reputation for medical expertise had spread even to the drachnids. Then again, humans were probably the only species crazy enough to look at something with more teeth than a shark convention and think, yeah, I bet I could perform surgery on that. The scanner results popped up on her holographic display, and Sarah's medical training kicked into high gear. The hatchling had a fairly simple developmental issue. Its primary stomach wasn't properly connected to its secondary digestive tract, a common enough birth defect in species with multiple stomach chambers. I can fix this, she said, looking Bob straight in their compound eyes. But I'll need to perform surgery. It's not a complicated procedure, but... Surgery? Bob's translator crackled. Cut inside? Yes, Sarah replied, already preparing a more detailed explanation. But Bob surprised her by immediately nodding all four eye stalks, the drachnid equivalent of an enthusiastic thumbs up. Humans good at cutting. Very precise. Not like drachnid healers. They use acid. Many die. Sarah tried very hard not to think about what acid-based surgery might look like. Right. Well, we'll stick to good old-fashioned laser scalpels and medical nanites, if that's all right with you. What followed was possibly the most surreal 3 hours of Sarah's medical career. She performed microsurgery on a baby drachnid while its warrior parent hovered nearby, alternating between making threatening gestures at anyone who came near the medical bay and asking surprisingly intelligent questions about human surgical techniques. The surgery itself went perfectly. Say what you will about human medical technology, but it worked wonders on pretty much anything with DNA, or the equivalent thereof. By the time Sarah was closing up, the hatchling's digestive system was properly connected, and its vital signs were stronger than ever. There we go, she said, carefully wrapping the little one back in its exoskeleton swaddling. Keep them on liquid nutrients for the next few days, then gradually introduce solid food. I've prepared a detailed care plan that the translator can handle. Bob took the hatchling with surprising gentleness, all four arms cradling the precious bundle. How much payment? They clicked, reaching for what Sarah assumed was some kind of currency pouch. Standard rate for pediatric surgery, she replied, then added quickly when Bob's mandibles started clicking in what might have been distress. But we can work out a payment plan if needed. No plan. We'll pay triple. Sarah blinked. Triple? That's really not triple, Bob insisted. For silence. Others cannot know came to human doctor. And that's when it clicked. Of course, drachnids were supposed to be the strongest, the most self-sufficient species in the galaxy. Coming to a human for help, especially for something as important as caring for a hatchling, would be seen as a sign of weakness. Your secret's safe with me, Sarah assured them, accepting the payment with a professional nod. Just make sure to come back in a week for a checkup? Bob was already heading for the door, but they paused, eye stalks swiveling back to regard her. We'll return, maybe bring others? Many hatchlings in clan, many problems. Sarah felt a smile tugging at her lips. My door's always open. Well, except on Sundays. Even human doctors need a day off. As she watched the Drachnid warrior disappear into the station's corridors, Sarah couldn't help but chuckle. If someone had told her in medical school that she'd end up being the go-to pediatrician for the galaxy's most feared predatory species, she'd have prescribed them some serious anti-hallucinogens. The next few months proved to be interesting, to say the least. Bob must have spread the word, despite the whole silence thing. Because Sarah started getting more Drachnid patients. They always came in during the quietest hours, always paid well above the standard rate, and always acted like they were engaging in some kind of covert operation rather than seeking routine medical care. One particularly memorable visit involved a Drachnid warrior she mentally nicknamed Susan, bringing in 3 hatchlings, all suffering from what turned out to be the Drachnid equivalent of chickenpox. Sarah spent 2 hours explaining that no, they didn't need to cull the infected ones, and yes, it was perfectly normal for hatchlings to get sick sometimes. The real breakthrough came about 6 months after Bob's first visit. Sarah was just finishing up her paperwork, because even in the space age, there was always paperwork, when her medical bay's doors hissed open to reveal a Drachnid unlike any she'd seen before. This one was enormous, its exoskeleton decorated with intricate patterns that practically screamed important person. Are you the human who fixes hatchlings? The translator rendered in a tone that somehow managed to convey both authority and desperation. Sarah straightened in her chair. That's me, Dr. Chen, pediatric specialist, and you are? I am Tz'K'thar, matriarch of the 3rd brood of the Drachnid Dominion. The massive alien's mandibles clicked rapidly, and I require your assistance with a matter of extreme delicacy. Well, that explained the fancy exoskeleton patterns. Sarah was pretty sure she was looking at the equivalent of Drachnid royalty. Of course. What seems to be the problem? The matriarch's next words nearly made Sarah fall out of her chair. I need you to teach our healers your methods. There was a long moment of silence, broken only by the gentle hum of medical equipment. I'm sorry, Sarah said carefully, but I thought Drachnids preferred their traditional healing methods. Traditional methods result in 40% hatchling mortality rate, the matriarch clicked dismissively. Your methods. We have been watching. Those you treat survive, thrive, grow strong. She leaned forward, all 4 eyes fixed intently on Sarah. Our species cannot afford to cling to tradition when better ways exist. And that's how Dr. Sarah Chen, human pediatrician, ended up running what amounted to a medical school for Drachnid healers. It was bizarre, challenging, and occasionally terrifying, especially when teaching them about anesthesia. Turns out Drachnids had some very strong opinions about forcing warriors to sleep, but it worked. Within a year, the hatchling mortality rate in the 3rd brood had dropped to less than 5%. Within 2 years, other broods started sending their healers to learn. By the 3rd year, the Drachnid Dominion had officially recognized human medical expertise as one of their honored skills, a distinction previously reserved for things like most efficient way to tear apart a battleship and best technique for intimidating lesser species. Sarah kept the official recognition plaque in her office, right next to a picture of her with Bob and their hatchling. Now a thriving youngster with all digestive systems in perfect working order. She liked to look at it whenever she needed a reminder of why she became a doctor in the first place. Because sometimes the most important victories aren't won on battlefields or in diplomatic chambers, but in quiet medical bays, where someone looks at a problem and thinks, yeah, I can fix that. Even if that problem has more teeth than sense, and comes from a species that usually features in other species' nightmare stories. On a completely unrelated note, Sarah's coffee consumption had actually decreased since she started treating Drachnid patients. Turns out, when you spend your days performing surgery on the offspring of spacefaring apex predators, caffeine just becomes redundant. Although she did have to request a bigger coffee mug after the time a Drachnid warrior, one she'd nicknamed Dave, brought in twins. But that's another story entirely. Remember when I mentioned Dave and the twins? Well, that story deserves telling, if only because it was the day Dr. Sarah Chen discovered that Drachnid warriors could actually faint. It started, as most interesting days in her practice did, with an urgent bang on her medical bay door at what humans would consider an ungodly hour of the morning. Sarah had just started her first cup of coffee when the security system announced a large, agitated drachnid requesting immediate entry. "Let them in," Sarah sighed, already reaching for her medical scanner. The doors hissed open to reveal a drachnid warrior who made Bob look positively petite. This one was carrying not one but two writhing bundles of exoskeleton swaddling, and all four of their arms were shaking. "Help!" the translator crackled. "Something wrong. Very wrong." Sarah was already moving, gesturing to the examination tables. "Place them here. What are their symptoms?" "Growing wrong," the warrior clicked, carefully setting down the bundles. "Shell too soft, and—" They hesitated, mandibles clicking in what Sarah had learned to recognize as extreme distress. "They stick together." Sarah's scanner hummed as she passed it over the first bundle, then the second. Her eyebrows shot up as the results appeared. "Well, that's interesting." "Bad interesting?" The warrior's eye stalks all swiveled toward her simultaneously. "No, just unusual. Your hatchlings are identical twins. Their shells are soft because they're sharing nutrients, and they're stuck together because they haven't fully separated yet. It's rare in drachnids, but not unheard of." The warrior, whom Sarah mentally dubbed Dave because their actual name sounded like a garbage disposal trying to digest a fork, made a sound that the translator couldn't quite handle. "Not corrupted?" "Definitely not corrupted," Sarah assured them, already preparing her surgical suite. "Just a natural variation, though they will need surgery to separate safely, and will need to supplement their diets to help their exoskeletons harden properly." Dave's eye stalks drooped in what might have been relief. Others said, "Terminate." Said twins are bad omen, but heard about human doctor who fixes special hatchlings. Sarah felt a familiar warmth in her chest. Bob's referral network was apparently still going strong. "Well, Dave. Do you mind if I call you Dave? It's easier than clicking my mandibles off. We're going to prove them wrong. These little ones are going to be just fine." The surgery took 6 hours, required 3 different types of medical nanites, and involved more delicate work than Sarah had done since her residency. But in the end, she had 2 perfectly healthy separated drachnid hatchlings, each with their own fully functional exoskeleton. That's when Dave fainted. Sarah hadn't even known drachnids could faint. She certainly hadn't expected a warrior who was easily twice her mass to suddenly topple over like a felled tree, nearly taking out one of her diagnostic machines in the process. "Right," she muttered, stepping over the unconscious warrior to check on the hatchlings. Note to self: add possible fainting to the parent warning sheet. When Dave came to, they found their hatchlings already feeding properly, their shells beginning to harden to the correct consistency thanks to Sarah's specialized nutrient formula. The warrior spent several minutes just staring at them, all 4 arms twitching occasionally as if wanting to reach out but afraid to touch. "You can hold them," Sarah said gently. "In fact, you should. Physical contact helps their shells develop properly." "Not break them?" "They're tougher than they look, just like their parent." Sarah demonstrated the proper holding technique, then carefully transferred one hatchling to Dave's upper arms, then the other to their lower arms. The sight of a battle-hardened drachnid warrior cradling 2 tiny hatchlings with the gentleness of a master glassblower was something Sarah wished she could share with the galaxy. It might have changed a lot of people's perspectives about the species. Then again, maybe that's why the drachnids kept coming to her in secret. "They need names," Dave clicked softly, eye stalks gently brushing over each hatchling's still soft shell. "Any ideas?" There was a long pause, then, "Could name after human doctor who saved them?" Sarah blinked. "You want to name your hatchlings after me?" "Is traditional. Honor those who give life gift." Dave's mandibles clicked in what Sarah had learned was their version of a smile, though maybe not exact name. Hard to click properly. And that's how 2 drachnid hatchlings ended up being named Sa and Ra, which was apparently as close as their species could get to Sarah without spraining their mandibles. Word spread quickly through the drachnid community about the twin hatchlings who not only survived but thrived. Sarah started getting more cases of unusual births. Hatchlings with extra limbs, different shell patterns, varying numbers of eye stalks. Each time, she treated them with the same care and respect she'd shown Bob's hatchling and Dave's twins. Gradually, the drachnids began to see these variations not as weaknesses to be culled, but as differences to be adapted to and strengthened. It was a slow change happening one hatchling. One parent, one clan at a time, but it was happening. Sarah kept a special hologram on her desk, next to Bob's family picture. Dave and the twins at their first shell-hardening ceremony. The twins had grown into strong young drachnids, their shells bearing unusual but beautiful spiral patterns where they had once been connected. They were living proof that being different didn't mean being weak, though Sarah did have to expand her medical bay after that to accommodate fainting Drachnid warriors. Just in case. Dr. Sarah Chen had seen a lot of unusual things in her career as the galaxy's only human specialist in Drachnid pediatric care. She'd dealt with fainting warriors, treated conjoined twins, and even once had to explain to a particularly concerned parent that no, their hatchling wasn't possessed by evil spirits. They were just going through a growth spurt. But nothing had quite prepared her for the day the matriarch of the third brood burst into her medical bay with what appeared to be a rainbow-colored hatchling. "Is this your doing?" Cathar demanded, thrusting the iridescent bundle towards Sarah. The hatchling's shell gleamed with swirling patterns of blue, purple, and green, colors that definitely weren't part of the standard Drachnid palette. Sarah blinked, set down her coffee, her new mug emblazoned with I-fix space dragons in both English and Galactic Standard, and took a closer look. "I assume you mean the coloration." "Yes!" The matriarch's eye stalks were practically vibrating with agitation. 3 broods are now producing hatchlings with... She seemed unable to even say it. "With beautiful, unique shell patterns?" Sarah suggested innocently, already running her scanner over the hatchling. The colors were unusual, yes, but the little one was perfectly healthy. "They're calling it the Chen effect," Teskthar clicked, "claiming it's because of your medical treatments, your nutrient supplements, your..." She waved all 4 arms expressively. "Your human influence!" Sarah had to bite back a smile. She'd suspected something like this might happen when she'd modified the nutrient formula to better support shell development. The supplements didn't just strengthen the exoskeletons. They allowed for a wider expression of genetic traits, including those that had been suppressed in the population for generations. "Well," she said carefully, "technically they're not wrong. The improved nutrition is allowing for fuller expression of naturally occurring genetic variations. These colors were always possible in Drachnid genetics. They were just rarely expressed due to environmental pressures and limited resources." The matriarch's mandibles clicked rapidly. But Drachnids are supposed to be dark, intimidating, not fabulous?" Sarah suggested, earning a glare from all 4 eyes. That's when Bob, her first Drachnid patient's parent and now a regular visitor, chose to stick their head into the medical bay. "Dr. Chen, I brought the..." "Oh." They froze upon seeing the matriarch. "Your Eminence, I brought the shell polish you requested." Sarah could have sworn she saw the matriarch's exoskeleton blush slightly darker. "You use human shell polish?" "The whole third brood does," Bob clicked matter-of-factly. "Best thing for maintaining healthy shell shine. Especially good for the new color variations." The matriarch looked from Bob to Sarah to the rainbow-hued hatchling, who chose that moment to chirp happily and wave its tiny claws. "It does have a certain aesthetic appeal," she admitted reluctantly. "And," Sarah added, unable to resist, "studies show that predatory species with bright coloration tend to be perceived as more dangerous, not less. Something about warning colors in nature." That got the matriarch's attention. "More dangerous, you say?" "Oh yes," Sarah continued, warming to her theme. "Just look at the most venomous creatures on Earth. Bright blues, brilliant reds, iridescent patterns. Nothing says, 'Don't mess with me,' quite like being colorful enough to see from orbit." She could practically see the wheels turning in the matriarch's head. "And these colors, they're completely natural? Not a weakness or mutation?" "Completely natural. Actually, they're a sign of exceptional health and strong genetic diversity. These hatchlings aren't just surviving. They're thriving so well that their bodies can afford to put extra energy into color production." The matriarch was silent for a long moment, all 4 eyes fixed on the happily chirping hatchling. Finally she clicked. "Perhaps we have been too hasty in our judgment of these changes." And that's how, within a year, the Drachnid Dominion went from being the terror of the galaxy to being known as those scary rainbow space dragons. Their reputation for ferocity didn't diminish one bit. If anything, it increased. After all, as Sarah liked to point out, only the most confident predator would dare to be that fabulous. The trend sparked what became known as the Great Shell Tint Debate, with traditionalists initially arguing against the new colors. But it's hard to maintain opposition when your fiercest warriors are proudly sporting iridescent shells, and the matriarch herself begins hosting shell polish parties, though they were officially called warrior enhancement symposiums. Sarah kept a special shelf in her office for the various shell polish formulas she'd developed, each specially designed to enhance and protect different color variations. The bestseller was a line she called Warrior's Pride, a polish that brought out natural iridescence while maintaining the traditional intimidating gleam drachnids were known for. Dave's twins, Sa and Ra, were among the first to develop the new coloration. Their spiral patterns now shimmered with blues and purples, making them easily recognizable among their clutchmates. They became something of a symbol for the changing times, proof that being different could be a source of strength and pride. The most amusing part? Other species in the galaxy actually found the colorful drachnids more terrifying than their monochrome predecessors. Something about the combination of razor-sharp claws, massive size, and prismatic sparkles really messed with their fight-or-flight responses. "It's simple psychology," Sarah explained to a perplexed Tiskathar. "If something that big and dangerous is confident enough to be pretty, it must be really sure of its ability to back up the display." The matriarch's response was to commission a special shell polish in royal purple with gold highlights. Within a week, there was a waiting list for the formula among the warrior caste. Sarah just added it to her ever-growing list of things I never expected to deal with in medical school, right under fainting warriors, and just above, explaining to a drachnid parent why their hatchling's first word was coffee. Speaking of coffee, she did finally have to upgrade to an even bigger mug. The new one read, "Making space dragons fabulous since Tuesday," and had a holographic coating that changed color depending on the temperature of the coffee inside. Bob got her that one. Turns out drachnids have a pretty good sense of humor once you get to know them. When Dr. Sarah Chen received an invitation to be the keynote speaker at the 347th Annual Galactic Medical Conference, she knew it was going to be interesting, especially since the invitation came with a personal note from the conference organizers requesting that she please try to prevent any attending drachnid medical personnel from intimidating the other delegates. Again. Again? Sarah muttered, looking up from her datapad at Bob, who was helping organize her medical supplies. "What do they mean, again?" Bob's mandibles clicked in what she'd learned to recognize as their version of embarrassment. "Last year's conference had incidents. Before your training program, old-style drachnid healers tried to demonstrate traditional acid-based treatments. Many delegates required therapy afterward." Sarah pinched the bridge of her nose. "Right. Of course they did." She looked at her calendar, where she'd penciled in, "Convince terrifying space dragons to play nice with others," right under, "Schedule hatchling vaccinations," and just above, "Develop new shell polish formula for aquatic environments." The conference was being held on neutral ground, a massive space station called the Hippocratic Nexus, that served as the galaxy's premier medical research facility. Sarah arrived early, accompanied by her team of newly graduated drachnid medical specialists, including Bob's eldest offspring, now a promising pediatric surgeon, and one of Dave's twins, Sa, who had developed an interest in xenogenetics. The first sign that this wasn't going to be a normal conference came when they entered the main reception hall. Every other species present took one look at her drachnid entourage and simultaneously tried to reach the exits, only to freeze in confusion when they realized the supposedly terrifying predators were wearing medical coats, specially designed to accommodate all four arms, and discussing pediatric care protocols. "Did you see the new paper on cross-species immunology?" Sa was asking one of their colleagues, their iridescent shell gleaming under the station's lights. "The implications for vaccine development are fascinating." A nearby Xerxian blob creature actually did a double take, its sensory appendages rippling in shock. Sarah cleared her throat. "Right, everyone remember what we discussed. Professional demeanor at all times, no intimidation displays, even accidental ones, and please try not to click your mandibles too enthusiastically during the presentations. The acoustic dampers can only handle so much." Her team nodded, their eye stalks bobbing in agreement. They'd practiced for this, running simulations of various social interactions that might occur during the conference. Sarah was particularly proud of the session where they'd mastered the art of professional disagreement without accidentally challenging someone to ritual combat. The keynote speech went surprisingly well, despite the initial tension when Sarah took the stage accompanied by her drachnid research assistants. She presented their groundbreaking work on adaptive pediatric care across species, including their recent success in developing universal vaccination protocols that could be customized for any species' immune system. It wasn't until the Q&A session that things got really interesting. A Medusan physician raised their tentacle. "Dr. Chen, while your results are impressive, surely you must admit that working with... They gestured vaguely at the drachnids. "With some of the finest medical professionals I've ever had the pleasure of teaching," Sarah supplied smoothly. Who, by the way, have reduced their species' infant mortality rate by 95% in just 3 years. The Medusan's tentacles curled in embarrassment. But they're currently pioneering revolutionary techniques in genetic therapy that could benefit every species in this room. Sa interjected politely, their voice perfectly modulated through the translator. Would you like to see our latest research data? We've been particularly successful in treating genetic disorders that affect exoskeleton development, with implications for any species with a chitinous or cartilaginous support structure. The room went quiet as the assembled medical professionals processed the sight of a rainbow-colored drachnid earnestly discussing genetic therapy, while wearing a lab coat and holding a medical data pad. Then a young Arcturian doctor raised their hand. Question about the shell-strengthening treatments? Could they be adapted for other species with structural support issues? And just like that, the ice was broken. The next hour turned into an impromptu collaborative session, with doctors from across the galaxy sharing ideas and asking questions about adapting drachnid medical techniques for their own species. The highlight of the conference came during the closing ceremony, when a Valaxian pediatrician approached Sarah's team with a case they couldn't solve. A rare genetic condition affecting their species' crystalline exoskeleton. Within minutes, Sa and their colleagues were deep in discussion, comparing notes on similar conditions they'd treated in drachnid hatchlings. By the end of the week, the sight of drachnid doctors consulting with other species had become almost normal. Almost. Did you see the look on that Regelian's face when Sa explained molecular restructuring therapy? Bob clicked quietly to Sarah as they packed up their presentation materials. I thought their eye stalks would pop off. Less amusing than the Centaurian who fainted when they realized they'd been having lunch with a drachnid every day without noticing, Sarah replied, carefully storing her presentation crystals. Though I'm proud of your restraint in not catching them before they hit the floor. Would have violated the no intimidation rule. Bob clicked sagely. Besides, the artificial gravity was set low enough that they bounced. The conference's success led to an unexpected development. Other species began requesting drachnid medical expertise. It turned out that a species known for their precision in combat could be equally precise in surgery, and their natural ability to synthesize complex biochemical compounds made them excellent pharmacologists. Sarah's medical bay soon became an unofficial interspecies teaching hospital. She had to expand again, this time adding a whole wing dedicated to cross-species medical education. The sight of drachnid doctors teaching gentle healing techniques to other species while sporting iridescent shells and professional demeanors became a symbol of how far they'd come. Though she did have to institute a new rule. No matter how much they beg, do not demonstrate traditional drachnid healing techniques. Some things are better left in the past, especially if they involve acid. She also had to get yet another coffee mug. This one read, I taught space dragons to heal, and had a holographic image of a drachnid in a lab coat. Bob's offspring gave it to her as a graduation present when they completed their medical residency. The most satisfying moment came when the Galactic Medical Council officially recognized drachnid medical techniques, the new ones, not the acid-based ones, as a certified medical specialty. The certificate arrived with a note. Thank you for turning the galaxy's most feared predators into its most sought-after pediatricians. Though we're still not sure how you did it. Sarah just smiled and took another sip from her coffee mug. Sometimes the best answers in medicine weren't about how you did something, but why. And wanting to help, whether you were human, drachnid, or any other species, was the best why there was. Though she did make sure to stock extra crash mats in the new teaching hospital. Just in case. Dr. Sarah Chen had gotten used to a lot of unusual things in her medical career. The rainbow-colored drachnids, the fainting warriors, the ever-increasing size requirements for her coffee mug. All of these had become normal parts of her daily routine. But even she had to pause when a Caraxian hunter alpha walked into her medical bay, carrying what appeared to be a mewling ball of teeth and claws. Heard you fix broken ones, the Caraxian rumbled, its fur bristling with nervous energy. Make strong. Sarah glanced at Bob, who was updating patient records nearby. Her first drachnid patient had become something of an unofficial liaison for her practice. Bob's mandibles clicked in what she recognized as their equivalent of a shrug. Word spreads, they clicked softly. Especially among apex predator species, they watch each other. Right, Sarah said, turning back to the Caraxian. Let's take a look at your little one, shall we? That was how Dr. Sarah Chen's practice became known as the go-to medical facility for predatory species pediatric care. After the Caraxians came the Velocirons, basically space raptors with advanced technology. Then the mantidri, imagine praying mantises the size of cars, and even a few xenomorphs, which, yes, were apparently real, and yes, had their own civilization once you got past the whole acid blood thing. Each new species brought its own challenges. The Caraxians needed special padding on all surfaces because their cubs couldn't retract their claws for the first few months of life. The Velocirons required reinforced doors after an incident involving an overprotective parent and their natural ability to figure out how to open things. The Mantidre needed extra high ceilings, and the Xenomorphs, well, they got their own special ward with acid-proof everything. But the most interesting development came from how the species interacted with each other in the waiting room. "Your hatchling's shell patterns are most impressive," a Caraxian hunter alpha commented to a Drachnid warrior one morning. "Very intimidating." "Thank you," the Drachnid clicked back, their iridescent shell gleaming. "Your cub's tooth development is remarkably advanced. They will be fearsome hunters." Sarah watched from her office as the galaxy's most dangerous species engaged in what amounted to a pediatric playdate, comparing notes on child-rearing and sharing tips on everything from proper nutrient intake to the best ways to child-proof a spacecraft. "Did you know," she overheard a Velociran explaining to a group of fascinated parents, "that human medical techniques can actually improve hunting reflex development without using any acid or combat training?" The assembled predators made appreciative sounds. Traditional medicine among predatory species tended to follow the survive or don't school of treatment, often with fatal results. The idea that you could actually help young ones become stronger without risking their lives was revolutionary. One particularly memorable day involved a xenomorph queen, wearing what appeared to be a hastily constructed containment suit to prevent acid drips, getting into a detailed discussion with a mantidre matriarch about the benefits of proper prenatal care. "Less than 5% mortality rate," the xenomorph was explaining, her translator struggling to convey her excitement. "No need for huge clutches when all survive." "Efficiency," the mantidre agreed, her compound eyes gleaming. "Humans understand efficiency." Sarah had to update her coffee mug collection again. The newest edition read, "Making apex predators into helicopter parents since Tuesday," and had a holographic display showing various species fussing over their young ones. The real breakthrough came when she walked into her medical bay one morning to find representatives from every predatory species in her practice engaged in what appeared to be a very serious discussion. "Dr. Chen!" Bob called out, waving all four arms. "We have proposal." It turned out that the various species had gotten together and decided that having just one human doctor for all their pediatric needs wasn't sustainable. They wanted to establish a proper teaching hospital, the first of its kind, specifically for predatory species medicine. "Joint venture," the Caraxian hunter alpha explained. "All species contribute, share knowledge. Build on human foundation," added a Velociran matriarch, "but adapt for each species' needs." "And," clicked Bob proudly, "we want you to be chief of medicine." Sarah looked around her medical bay, now more of a medical complex, at the assortment of beings that would have sent most humans running for the nearest escape pod. The Drachnids with their rainbow shells and medical coats, the Caraxians carefully padding sharp edges for their cubs, the Velocirans installing child-proof locks, the Mantidre designing higher doorways, and the Xenomorphs working on better containment suits. "Well," she said, reaching for her coffee mug, "I'm going to need a bigger office." The Galactic Predator Pediatric Medical Center opened 6 months later. The building was a marvel of xeno-architecture, designed to accommodate everything from tiny Drachnid hatchlings to adolescent xenomorphs. The staff was equally diverse, with each species contributing their unique insights and abilities to the practice of medicine. Sarah's favorite part was the new parents' orientation program, where veteran parents from each species helped newcomers adjust to the idea of preventative medicine and regular checkups. Watching a Drachnid warrior professionally explain the importance of proper nutrition to a nervous Velociran, while a xenomorph demonstrated safe swaddling techniques with acid-proof blankets, never got old. They did have to institute a few special rules. 1. No comparing hunting trophies in the waiting room. 2. All acid-based bodily fluids must be properly contained. 3. Traditional medical techniques involving combat, acid, or ritual scarification are strictly prohibited. 4. The ceiling-mounted prey dummies in the pediatric ward are for physical therapy only. 5. Yes, all species must attend the gentle handling workshop, even if you have 4 arms and perfect coordination. Sarah kept her original coffee mug, the iFix Space Dragons one, on a special shelf in her new office, along with holographs of her first patients from each species. Bob's hatchling, now a respected surgeon, Dave's twins, pioneering geneticists. The Caraxian cub, who became their first cross-species medical specialist. The Velociran, who revolutionized physical therapy for predatory species. Each one was proof that sometimes the best way to change the galaxy wasn't through force or fear, but through caring for its youngest members, one checkup at a time. Though she did have to request a special budget for crash mats. Turns out fainting wasn't just a drachnid thing. All predatory species had trouble staying upright when overwhelmed by parental emotion. Who knew? The end. Epilogue. Dr. Sarah Chen's Guide to Pediatric Care for Various Species became a bestseller across the galaxy, though the chapters on predatory species care remained mysteriously absent from public copies. The private edition, distributed exclusively to certified medical professionals, included a special note. When treating predatory species offspring, remember that both parent and child respond best to a calm demeanor and terrible coffee. Also, always keep spare swaddling material on hand. They're surprisingly picky about brand names. And yes, all of them can faint. Keep the crash mats handy. P.S. Stock up on shell polish, acid-proof containers, and child-proof locks. Trust me on this one. P.P.S. Under no circumstances allow them to demonstrate traditional healing techniques at medical conferences. The cleanup costs alone will bankrupt your department. P.P.P.S. If anyone asks why the waiting room needs reinforced walls rated for orbital bombardment, just smile and nod.